Good morning. This is a video showing everybody how to change the filter media without having to purchase the transfer tank. I know I get a lot of questions about that. I know the transfer tanks are a little pricey, but to be honest with you, they're worth their weight in gold. But so anyhow, we're going to go ahead and jump right into this video. I've had the unit going through a backwash. I would suggest that when you get in and you get ready to start your filter change, put it into backwash and let it run through the entire 8 minutes. That way it helps separate out the carbon and the resin, and we get a good filter change. So we're all done with the first backwash. So now we're going to bypass the unit. That way we don't get too terribly wet here. And now we're going to take the unit off from the bypass and unhook everything. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the brine line off from the salt tank. I'm just going to tuck that back behind everything so it doesn't get in the way. We take our clip off the drain. Let that drain line sit over to the side for right now. And last but not least, we're going to unplug it. And of course I've got my cord all tangled up around the drain line. Alright, now we've got everything unhooked off the unit. Go ahead and unscrew the nuts that hold the bypass valve to the unit itself. Now we've got the unit disconnected from the plumbing. Just going to rotate this around so you can see a little better. There's not a real good way of taking the head off the unit. There's not a whole lot to grab onto. I usually carry a big screwdriver, or you can just use a piece of iron bar. Put that into either the inlet or the outlet. Always want to try and set the head somewhere where you're not going to knock it over, step back and step on the thing. I'm famous for doing that. I could break anything. Go ahead and pull your distributor tube out. Now this I will generally take just so that I know it's staying safe and I don't break it anywhere. I'll just set it in the salt tank just to keep it out of the way. All right, as far as tools needed to siphon the old filter out, I've got about a 3-foot piece of 1/2-inch PVC, and I've just got some 1/2-inch clear poly tubing. I probably got about 6 or 7 feet of tubing hooked onto that, and you can zip tie it to the PVC, or you can use some electrical tape, either one. So this is going to be our siphon hose. We're going to do this just like if you'd ever siphoned gas out of a car when you were a teenager. Set that end down inside the unit. And the other end, we've got a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket, of course. And we're going to use that to catch the carbon in. So all you want to do is stick that down in, get it down to about where you start hitting the media inside the tank. And it doesn't appear like I've got a whole lot of media left in this tank. We mess around with this a lot. But all you do is go ahead and suck on the hose, get some water going. And you just take your stick here, you just start moving it around little by little. You can see we've got some carbon coming out there. All you do is you move that around just like if you were a little vacuum cleaner for like a pool cleaner. Just move it around so that you get all the carbon out. I don't know how well you can see this. And when you're doing this, the only reason I do it with the siphon hose like this is you can control it a lot better. I know some guys have had luck using shop vacs and just shop vacuuming the carbon out, but to be honest with you, it's harder to control that way, and you end up sucking up a lot of resin with the carbon. So it's always worked out better for me just to go ahead and do it by hand here. And you just watch the hose and see what you've got coming out of your bucket. When you get down towards the bottom of the carbon, you're going to start seeing it clear up, and you're going to start seeing the resin in there. And for our purposes today, I'm going to go ahead and stop it here. Set that back over inside the salt tank. And now we've got a bucket full of water and filter media. So I'm going to dump out the water and show you what we have left. How well you can see that, but now all we have left is a bucket full of carbon. And with most of the units, you'll be able to fit it all in one 5-gallon bucket. The 12s, if you have a 12-inch unit, you may have to have 2 buckets with you because you're going to fill those up with water pretty quick. So we've got the old filter out. And we've got a new 3-pound filter. Going to slice that open. Now you may want to get a funnel to put this in. All depends on what you're comfortable with. I'm just going to pour this right down inside the tank. Alright, so we've got the new filter inside the tank now. It's time to put everything back together in reverse. Take your distributor tube, get it in the center there. Pretty much got that lined up there. Now I've got the unit back on the plumbing and I'm tightening down the nuts for the bypass. We've got our brine line for the brine tank. We'll put that back on. We've got our drain line. Don't forget to put your red clip back on. Of course, I've got my power cord caught in the top of the valve. It's generally not recommended. As you can tell, I don't make professional videos. I'm just going to pop this back off so I can get the power cord out of there. Don't make that same mistake. It's sort of a pain in the butt. All right, let's try that again and see if I can get that hooked up without catching everything there. All right, let's plug this back in. Now, before we turn the unit back on and get water running through it, just keep in mind we just poured 3 pounds of dry filter back into that. So this is going to be sort of like when you fire the unit up for the first time. We don't want to just turn the water back on and off we go. Right now we're in the brine draw. Pull this up here so we can actually see. And what we're going to do is we're going to advance this by hitting the regen button. We want to take that over to the rinse position. That way we're putting water into it from the top going down, and that way we get our filter nice and wetted down before we turn the unit onto the house. So at this point here, we're just going to open up the inlet bypass. We've got that filling up and going through a rinse cycle. At this point, I'd go ahead and unplug the unit. And take this time to go ahead and do your paperwork, clean up any mess that you have in the house, and give the unit time to rinse a little bit. Yeah. So like I said, at this point here, just unplug the unit, let it rinse itself down for a little bit, and clean up your stuff, do your paperwork, get everything that you need done, and by the time you get done with all that, it'll be time to go to the next step. So once you have that done, go ahead and plug the unit back in. Now we're going to go ahead and turn the bypass off at this point. We're going to hit the regen button, and we're going to go back into the service mode. Now you'll notice that we've got a little bit of air coming through the lines here. That's that air that gets trapped at the top of the tank from filling it up. I'm going to take this all the way back around to the backwash again. That way we get the last of the air out of the tank. So press and hold the regen button. And keep pressing the regen button until we get to the backwash. And we're going to take this back around to the second backwash. Now that we're at the second backwash, we're going to open the inlet valve only just a little bit. And all we're doing is filling up that pocket of air and getting water all the way up to the top. You don't want to open that all the way up and jam-pack the head full of carbon. All right, as you can tell by the sound, we've got water all the way up to the drain line now. We're going to come back around to the front. We're going to hit the regen button again. Now we're back to our rinse cycle. I'd go ahead and let it run all the way through the rinse. It's always a good idea when you get to this point, go ahead and open up both valves. And the reason I opened both of them up at this time, one, we're done putting the new filter in. And two, it's real easy to walk away and leave one of the valves partially open, partially shut. And then you're going to have hard water and you're going to end up going back. So just try and get in the habit of opening up both of them at the same time at that point. And that is it for changing the filter. Now we've shortened this down a little bit just for convenience, but as you can tell, it really doesn't take a long time. The only drawback to doing it this way is no matter how neat you are, you end up getting water on the floor. So you just want to make sure that there's nothing down on the floor that's going to get wet. If you've got to take some rags in to put around the bottom of the tank, go ahead and do that. Just anything so you don't leave a mess in somebody's house. I'm going to go ahead. Normally I'd let this run all the way out for the full 6 minutes. But we're going to go ahead and advance this over to service for the very last part of this. All right, we're back to the clock here. So now we're going to reset the filter capacity. I don't know how well you can see that. So anyhow, all we want to do is hit the next button and the up arrow at the same time. First thing that's going to pop up is the hardness. Yeah, I think you can see that. And then go ahead and press those again. You're going to hold them down for about 7 seconds. The first thing that's going to pop up is going to be a 3. And that 3 just represents the pounds of carbon that are inside the unit. We're going to hit next. And this one here is the yearly reminder. We're going to leave that exactly where it's at. We're going to hit next again. This is when it's asking you if you want to reset the filter capacity. Right now it says no. We're going to use the up arrow. We're going to change that to yes. And what that's going to do is it's going to reset your filter capacity back up to 112,000. And that's going to take that call for service sign off of the unit. And once you have that, hit next. This is where your phone number ought to be. We're going to hit next. When you hit C11, that's the last thing that you're going to see. On your units, you're probably going to see a C8. And we're done. So at this point here, go ahead and find a faucet inside the house. Here's our Cincinnati warehouse. This is where all your units come out from. And go ahead and find a faucet somewhere in the house and turn it on. That way it has time to rinse the new filter through and you don't get any carbon dust in the house. But that is it, a 5-gallon bucket. 3-foot piece of 1/2-inch PVC and some vinyl tubing, and you have just changed the filter in one of your units. So it's not real bad. It probably takes maybe 20 minutes from start to finish, right around in there. The transfer tank, the long term, is really the way to go because you're not getting the floor all wet. You're not having to carry a 5-gallon bucket full of wet filter out to the truck with you when you're done. It's just a whole lot neater and a whole lot cleaner. I don't know if you've watched the video with the filter change with the transfer tank. It looks a little more complicated. It's really not. The transfer tank is definitely worth the investment. It's not like you have to get one for every truck. You know, if you get one tank set up, that way you have it for whoever's going out to do filter changes. And that's all you really need. So at any rate, that is it for changing the filter in the iGen systems. This will work with any of the valves. It'll work with the older systems. You know, it really doesn't matter. I mean, if you're needing to change the filter out, it's a quick and easy way to take the old filter out and get a new filter in. But if you have any questions or comments, leave them on the comment section. And other than that, you all have a great day. Thanks. Bye.